Layovers, your weekly dose of aviation innovation.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard from the flight deck. This is Paul Papadimitriou.
Hello everybody, this is Alex Hunter.
We'll be your pilots for this show about the news, the startups and the technologies defining the modern air travel experience.
Our flight time today, an hour and 20 minutes, and we expect an on-time arrival. Coming up on this flight, the 747 lives for another day. The FAA tests a pilotless plane. The dream of the flying car is near. United gives up on the A380, but also on some passengers. Clint Eastwood and Tom Hanks to make a movie about a miracle on the Hudson. Lots of European cities want Emirates. EasyJet goes drone for maintenance, and a Ryanair passenger legally changes his name to avoid a ticket fee.
As we reach our cruising altitude, I'm going to turn off the fasten seatbelt sign for you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax, and let's turn on those noise-cancelling headphones.
Flight 17 to Memphis. Hi, Alex.
Hello, back in the saddle after what seems like months.
Yeah, because actually, so some of the people, if you've listened to the last two episodes, first of all, we want to apologize for the sound. We tried something different because we were in the same room. Didn't quite work out. I mean, Alex, you cannot imagine the number of tweaks I had to make the sound to make it even just sound like the way the end product sounds. Because
it's funny because we figured it would be easier and better to do it in the same room, but actually, technically, it ended up being a lot harder.
Exactly. But anyway, so apologies for the sound. You can hear that this week is back to normal, and we promise that we want to do again stuff where Alex and I are in front of each other, but we'll do it in a more smarter way next time. But so, yeah, and it's been like almost 3 weeks we haven't recorded now. So, wow, I haven't seen you forever, Alex.
I know. We've just been both kind of all over the place, literally all over the world. So it's nice to be back doing this in our normal environment.
Actually, our friend John Bradford told me last week when I saw him in Poland, in Warsaw, says, okay, the number of episodes is inversely correlated to your number of travels. It's true that...
Right. It's so true. It's so true. It's kind of ironic that our aviation and travel podcast gets interrupted by aviation and travel.
But throughout those travels, we both had a lot of our friends and people we actually also don't know that came up to us and say, oh, I listen to your show, guys. So it's really, thank you everyone for listening to us. It's really
it's been really satisfying. I had dinner a couple of days ago with some really good friends of mine from my college days, and they said, their husband and wife, we listened to 3 of your episodes back to back on a recent road trip, and I was like, 3 episodes? Even I wouldn't do that. And they're like, oh yeah, we learned so much, and my friends like, I use TripIt now thanks to you guys. It's a religion. So big shout out to Jack and Fran for those really, really kind words. That was really nice to hear.
And John Biggs, our famous John Biggs, who were bashing us about the sound in the beginning, was actually telling that the sound is now okay. I mean, he clearly hasn't listened to the past 2 episodes. So thank you everyone. It's really great. And Gen was interacting with you on Twitter. So
thank you so much to Gen Kanai for pointing out a massive error that I made in our last or episode before that. When we were talking about the ANA rebranding, I said erroneously that the word Nippon is an old or ancient word for Japan, when in fact in Japanese it's the modern usage for the word Japan. So apologies for that, and thank you to Gen for correcting me on that one.
Yeah, and thank you because he keeps sending me news via Facebook on the Facebook page of Layovers. There's always a notification for a new message, and invariably it's Gen pointing me out to something new. So thank you so much for filling us with news.
We love stuff like that, so please keep it up.
So first, the industry news of the week, the ones that have, of the weeks almost now, because we haven't recorded for a little bit, but that have caught our eyes. First, the A380. The A380 in the US, Alex.
Yeah, this is a strange one. There was some rumor at the end of May, beginning of June, that United Airlines might be interested in acquiring A380s. And some of these were going to come maybe from Malaysian or some of the other ones from Skymark. the airline in Japan that was the on again, off again suitor for the A380. And for a lot of us, kind of armchair airline CEOs, it made a lot of sense for them. But they have now categorically come out and said via their CFO that the A380 doesn't suit them. They'd rather do multiple flights a day and between city pairs and in a wide body airplane than one flight a day in something like the A380. So they've been playing heavily on the 787 and the A350, interestingly, and they said that economically for them, the A380 just cannot stack up against the Dreamliner. But United have been making some very weird decisions in the last few weeks, and I think we're going to touch on one of them a little bit later. But yeah, so that I think they've crushed that rumor pretty much as quickly as it was born.
It will be interesting because at some point a lot of the A380s from Emirates will be on the market. So I mean, as a second-hand plane, if you want. So it would be very interesting to see what happens there because I understand here UA's position that the A380 doesn't work for them. They don't have the same type of network like, of course, Singapore, Dubai, and maybe China at some point. But which is why they're actually betting on planes like the Dreamliner. But still, in terms of economics, a Super Jumbo is per seat cost is actually not that bad.
Yeah, and they've got as our friend Dan mentioned in the ATC episode. They have a substantial presence in San Francisco where they do a lot of trans-Pacific traffic to Australia, Southeast Asia, and beyond. It seems like a natural fit for those type of routes. But, I don't think this is dead yet, but for the immediate future, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll keep tracking this because it's always a big wonder who will be the next airline buying an A380, and nobody is buying them anymore. I mean, we have the back orders from Emirates, but that's about it, right?
That's about it. Yeah.
Talking about large networks, this is a piece of news that I first wanted to talk a bit later, but I think it fit quite well here. So the MIT has done a research about the airline industry, which is rare enough. I mean, maybe they do more than I know of. But they've done a research of the data of airline traffic between 1990 and 2012, and they've really see. I'll put the article in the show notes, of course. But they really see how the center of gravity for the airline industry has shifted. And basically, they say that places like Dubai, obviously, but also Beijing, were almost non-existent in terms of air traffic in 1990,
that caught my eye too.
And that everything is now shifting there. And thanks to, and that's the major, it's not a finding because it seems kind of pretty normal, but that's thanks to a lot of connecting flights first and of the big alliances because they were also born in the early 90s. This allowed for more fluidity of traffic and more choices. Interesting though, they say that, it's true that, and we mentioned that a few times, especially I did because I fly a lot of Emirates, that for passengers, it makes usually more sense to have a direct route. It's less hassle. You don't have to change planes. But what they're seeing in their data is that more and more people are opting for routes that have a connecting flight. And that's interesting. And that is, for them, one of the biggest advancements in air traffic is that we are seeing more and more traffic and more routes because of these interconnecting flights and hubs.
And we've talked about this in the past, that there's definitely an appetite, maybe not an appetite is not the right word, but people are willing to endure that layover, that connection to fly on better airlines. So, you're a great example with Emirates and Lufthansa, be it because of status or whatever, people are or scheduling or fleet or whatever, people are more than happy now to endure a brief layover in a layover-friendly airport like Dubai or Frankfurt.
Correct. And they say that the links between regions, so global connectivity, has increased 140%. Wow. In that period. So yeah, I mean, it's something we're seeing, but I mean, it's a great analysis. I'll put the article up because it's
beautifully done too.
Yeah, beautifully done. I'm a subscriber to a lot of the MIT stuff, not only online but also the magazine, and it's really a good thing. So they don't write a lot about the airline industry, but I'll try to find if they do other stuff like this because it seems interesting. Because they have something called the MIT's Lab for Aviation and the Environment. So probably they do more than this article. Back to United then, they basically are leaving JFK, abandoning JFK completely in the US.
So bizarre.
Yeah, they're moving all the operations to Newark. It kind of makes sense when you think about it, no?
I think it caught just about everybody by surprise. I mean, JFK, love it or hate it, is not, it's kind of a nightmare operationally. I mean, the amount of time you taxi and the fuel burn associated with that, but to just pick up a massive operation and just shut it down as opposed to gradual, over years, slightly move, everything over to across the Hudson to Newark. But they just said, yeah, we're leaving JFK, we're moving everything. And with the continental infrastructure that they already had in place at Newark, I kind of get it. But Newark is such a crappy airport that I don't know, they must be investing so much money in making this happen. And I think they're going to lose a lot of business traffic as a result of this.
I don't know. I don't fly usually out of Newark. It's been quite a while. I haven't done so, actually. So I cannot really judge. I've heard that they're putting some investment in the terminal there to make it a better experience. I don't know how it will stack up. But they already have they already had a lot of flights there. So I think they just want to... They're keeping some flights to LaGuardia, which, come on, is even worse than Newark.
Yeah.
They have 30 plus flights. So not that many, right? But it'll probably make room for other, maybe also because it's a cheaper airport to run from. I don't know.
Yeah, and they're doing a kind of re-gauging of a lot of their fleet assignments as well. So they're putting a bunch of their 757s that do the transatlantic service on domestic, so they can introduce this thing they call PS, which is slightly less terrible than their normal service, and then moving those 767s onto the transatlantic flight. So they're going through a lot of major overhauls in that airline, and I think they've had major hiccup after major hiccup with people getting abandoned in remote Canadian airfields.
Yeah, that's we could
to
talk
sleep
about that.
in army bases.
Yeah, that was a Chicago to London flight, and
something like that. Yeah,
there was a rudder issue or something, and so the flight had to divert and land at an airbase in Canada, which happens. And if there's a security reason, there is a security reason. But apparently, it was the conditions with the passengers that were put in barracks. I mean, you never know, because I've heard a lot of contracting stories. I'm sure it wasn't horrible, but the major point was that there was absolutely no communication whatsoever from United for 20 hours. And this is the problem. It was oh, okay, we're here and we don't know what's going on now. We're in the middle of nowhere in an airbase in Canada. We're supposed to fly to London. Okay, we get it that the aircraft had an issue, but what do we do now? This is where the problem is. I mean, United is known not to be the best airline when it comes to customer service.
No.
But that's a very bad story.
20 hours they were at this army base in Goose Bay. 20 hours with no communication in cold weather. I would have been so angry.
Yes, absolutely. And apparently they even they put some passengers in the wrong place, another right barracks. I mean, it's I understand that these kind of operations are not easy to deal with when you have to unload a massive aircraft in the middle of nowhere. But I mean, still, at least having some kind. I mean, you and me say that all the time. Having some type of communication, even if the conditions are bad, would alleviate a lot of stuff. And people were obviously nowadays tweeting it out and putting pictures of Facebook and say, "Look, this is the." So all major outlets were picking the story. United was being silent. It's a bit sad, but. Coming back to the PS, what do you think about it? That PS branding for me is really kind of bizarre. No, it doesn't even, if you read it just in their press release, it doesn't even stand out. It's because they are not in capitalized. So it just looks like a very strange piece of branding.
Yeah, it's very strange. And I think a lot of U.S. airlines are starting to move away from the traditional economy, premium economy, in some cases business and first, because they're not, these new products they're introducing, especially for transcontinental, are not falling elegantly into one of those buckets. I mean, Delta, we've seen, have got 9 different seat classes or something crazy like that. JetBlue have done it with Mint because they don't have, it's not a business class or first class product. It's something different. But yeah, PS is a very strange thing to use. They've used it for quite a long time, but it's now they're really pushing it hard. It just sounds like an afterthought because it literally is.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. That's the first thing I'm thinking. And this is not a premium product. These look like, oh, this is a footnote. Anyway, but talking about good news in the US and good news for you, Alex, because I know that this airline has your heart still. It's that it's Virgin America.
Yeah.
The opposite.
They just smashed it at the Skytrax Awards, which happened a couple of weeks ago. They've got Best Airline in North America for the very first time, which is a big deal.
Yeah, especially for a low cost, actually. Yeah.
For a low cost, yeah, it's huge. Best low cost airline in the US for the 5th year in a row.
Wow.
And best staff service in North America for the 4th year in a row. So they are smashing it. And actually, here's a little footnote. When we were first coming up with kind of internal branding, we played with the idea of not calling it first class and main cabin as they are now, but uptown and downtown.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of fun. But I think initially they wanted to make it very clear what each product was, so they did go with first class and main cabin. But yeah, I'm very proud of Virgin America. They've continued to do great work, and people keep saying, "Oh, the other airlines are catching up," but clearly not.
Well, apparently not. Yeah,
you have to combine physical product with great service, and having flown 4 legs on domestic airlines in the U.S. in the last month, which I'll talk about a bit later, that's a potent combination that if you get right can work really, really well. And if you don't get it right, that combination of physical and soft product, then you're doomed.
Yeah, you're doomed. Yeah. But we're still talking about Virgin, though, and I want to have your thoughts about it. So we know that the flight attendants have already unionized, I think, almost a year ago. And now the pilots just decided also to get unionized, which is, let's be honest, it's a traditional, it's a kind of unusual way of, the airline is growing. At some point that happens. So do you have any thoughts about that?
It was an inevitability, sadly. And I am amazed that they lasted this long without unionizing. And I don't think it was a reflection of unhappiness, and I'm speaking purely on speculation here, within the flight crew. I just think they got to a size where it made sense. What sucks is that when you have 600 pilots, and your costs go up when you unionize. So that will probably get passed on to the consumer, which is a real shame. But
we'll see. I mean, now, so usually what happens is when the unionize now, their compensation is actually locked, and they get into negotiation with the airline about a general contract. So at least at the beginning, the price will not increase because probably the compensation stays as long as the negotiations are going on. And negotiations, which I'm not sure even have started, could take up to 3 years.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And I think I just don't want it to distract from critical path, so that they carry on doing what they're doing. They're starting service to Hawaii, which is gutsy. So it'll be interesting to see if this disrupts it anyway. But, I'm not mad or upset. I think it was an inevitability, and hopefully it makes the airline ultimately run more efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely. Still talking about the US, remaining in the US. So there's American Airlines, which is one of the big airlines, of course, legacy in the US. It's the one. So we're back to our saga about the Middle Eastern airlines. It's the one that has a very interesting position because they are fighting in the recent fights against allegations of subsidies by the Gulf Airlines. They are part, of course, of that movement against Gulf Airlines. But at the same time, they have code-sharing agreements with Etihad, and they are part of One World, which has, I think, Qatar inside, right? So they are the most kind of on the fence about this whole thing. And there was this article you shared with me that I found pretty interesting, which says, should they just not leave behind the other American airlines and go full on with Gulf Airlines?
Yeah, it was a really interesting article and made a lot of sense. I mean, I hadn't thought about it in the way that you just kind of laid out, that they have a vested interest in the success of specific Middle Eastern airlines, and by virtue of that fact, all Middle Eastern airlines with their connections to One World. So this article is suggesting that they've been keeping their mouths shut relatively for that reason, and they may even break rank and just say, you know what, this is getting out of hand and this is silly. We do not officially support this.
Yeah, apparently, and they're really using a lot of the code sharing for the Gulf with Etihad. So there is probably, maybe now they're just edging their bets, right? But I believe that this article might be right. One key statistics in the article that caught my eye is that they said that the U.S. seats offered by the three Gulf airlines is expected to reach almost 4.5 million by 2016, which is more than twice the 2013 levels. I mean, we've been talking about this. Impressive, right?
It is. It's and I think there's an article or a statistic further in the article that's saying that according to Qatar, which you have to take that with a grain of salt, that they've provided revenue benefit. I'd love to understand the definition of that, of $60 million to its U.S. partners. That's not a small amount of money.
No, it's not.
And so you can see this angst that American Airlines is kind of displaying, and they've even come out publicly and say they'd love to work with the Gulf Airlines more if the terms are right, which is basically saying, yeah, we see you as a viable business partner. Let's figure this out so we all save face and move on.
Yeah, we've both been talking about this in all our past episodes. What about being part of an alliance with the Gulf? I mean, probably the Emirates is too big now to be part of an alliance, and they're having maybe a better cards if they're not in alliance. But for both Qatar and Etihad, it might actually make sense. But to that, there was a Paris Air Show in Le Bourget, which we wanted to attend, but I couldn't make it. And you couldn't make it either. You didn't go, right?
No, I wasn't able to go.
So, I mean, next year probably, because it's one of these fantastic air shows where you see a lot of the jetliners on display. But during that one, talking about One World, I always forget if he's the CEO, the chairman of Qatar, Al Baker, said, "We are only committed to One World provided the spirit of when we join the alliance is maintained. If we are joined with an airline that acts against our interests and blocks our access to cities like New York, then we have no purpose to be in an alliance." So look, he's known to be always very outspoken, but they know that at the same time, look, I mean, we're part of One World, but that also means that we have to have access to the routes that are part of One World. If you're blocking us access to the US, we might actually leave. I know if he's just saying that to say that in order to put pressure, but
yeah, he does not mince his words, and he fires shots across the bow whenever he gets an opportunity. And I love this. They ordered I think 14 777s at Paris, which is kind of the signing ceremony place to be. He said during the press conference afterwards, he said, "As you know, no press conference with Qatar Airways is without controversy. So I would like to make a statement. I hope that the gentleman at Delta knows that we are creating even more jobs in the U.S. by buying these planes." It's like that was a direct call out to Richard Anderson, the CEO of Delta. It's so funny. I mean, jeez,
but it's partially. I mean, again, some stuff we've debated, you and me, is that it's true that part of the whole deal is actually also important. I mean, they are buying a lot of Boeing planes, and that creates a lot of jobs. I mean, now you can hate them or like them. I mean, they do, and this is why we've both said that Boeing, but also the airports in the U.S. are pretty actually siding with the Gulf Airlines because they want to see more traffic. So anyway, but he has a lot of entertainment value. Al Baker, because
he's fantastic. I think he's a fantastic character in this whole charade.
But talking about that, you sent me another article that was fascinating. Back to still in the Middle East, but about Emirates this time. It was Tim Clark who basically said that, well, look, we could actually fly from so many other places from Europe to the US.
Yeah, I think we mentioned this a couple of episodes ago that they were willing to explore it, and they looked at Copenhagen and a few other places, and some airports had actively asked them to come through. But now they're saying that 10 European cities have asked Emirates to fly transatlantic, not Dubai to their city, which they would do, but specifically, we want you to fly from our city in Europe to America. And that's pretty amazing, because if it works out, which I actually think it will, it could open up a huge new market for Emirates. And even though they've said that those types of routes, those Fifth Freedom routes, were never part of their initial business model.
It must be now.
Now it has to be. It's a no-brainer.
Which is why I was saying earlier that they shouldn't probably be part of an alliance anymore. A few years ago, you would have asked me, I said, yeah, come on, please be part of an alliance, because for me, it doesn't make any sense when I fly to the US or even within Europe, or I don't know, to Africa. I don't want to go to Dubai and continue. I mean, Asia, obviously, for us, makes sense to use Emirates. But now with this, I mean, like I mentioned 2-3 episodes ago that I've done the Milan to New York route, which is a Fifth Freedom route. And that was a great experience. You know what? When we were mentioning these rumors that there might be a London to some East Coast city, I mean, I welcome it. I mean, honestly, this is something. And you know what? Again, this is something a lot of other airlines have been doing. I mean, the American airlines, like you mentioned earlier by United, I've been using the Fifth Freedom type of routes in Southeast Asia. They basically go to Tokyo, to Narita usually, and then they continue to another city. That's a Fifth Freedom route. So I think that Emirates should just pursue doing that. And having won in court in Italy, because you know that when they opened that route, it was first struck down by a court order, and then they won. Being in the EU, probably the fact that they won in one court in one member state of the EU will actually lead that this will be possible in other cities. I mean, we'll see what happens with the airports, because we know that Amsterdam is trying to block them, for instance. But it's interesting.
It is interesting, and at the IATA conference, which was last month in Miami, Emirates came out and said that they could feasibly see 100 new destinations from the new airport, the new Dubai airport, at Dubai World Center, and they've said Tim Clark, the CEO, said that there are first, second, and third level towns and provinces all over the world that are not served by Emirates and not meaningfully served by other mainline carriers. And they have 100 of those on their radar.
Wow.
Which is staggering, absolutely staggering. So I think that really reinforces the comments earlier about serving the U.S. They just opened up Orlando, but you think of all the cities in China.
Yeah, exactly.
India.
South America. Yeah.
South America. Emirates is just going to be a huge.
I cannot sadly share it here because it's public, but I was having a privileged discussion about Emirates' strategy into opening new routes, and I've shared some of it with you offline, and I sadly cannot say it in public, but they are very smart at the way they approach cities, airports, and all the stakeholders when they want to approach a new city. It's not just. They are really, of course, they have some firepower, but also between the cities being willing to have an extra partner like Emirates, but at the same time, they offer a lot of other, stuff around. They make it like as a package. It's not only like, hey, here's a plane that will come to your city every day. No, they actually really go into a whole strategy about the destination strategy, and that's extremely smart. I mean, maybe one day I'll have the possibility to share more about these stories. I've been privileged to listen, but they really are smart. They really are smart.
Yeah, they really are. They embed themselves in communities.
Correct. Absolutely. And you said the article that you just mentioned about this the new airport. You remember we said that Tim Clark was saying that it could reach up to 240 million passengers a year, which is crazy.
Just staggering.
He said there's nothing stopping us to doubling the size of the airline to 600 aircrafts once we open that airport. Which tells me, by the way, that actually for a long time, this airport was a kind of a second thought, and now it's becoming part of the strategy.
Absolutely.
Clearly. This is what they are announcing here, basically. Anyway, coming back to Europe, very short about a story we've been talking about. TAP, the legacy carrier, national carrier of Portugal, sold. I mean, not entirely, I think 60%. And it's a joint venture between JetBlue and Azul, which is a Brazilian airline. JetBlue. So they really try to do stuff outside, right?
Well, it's interesting because it's a joint venture between the founder of JetBlue.
Sorry, this is what I meant. Sorry, yes.
And the founder of Azul. So really interesting guy. David Neeleman, I have massive amounts of admiration for. He was born in Brazil to American parents and left when he was 4, but retains his Brazilian citizenship. So once he was kind of semi-unceremoniously removed from JetBlue, which I still maintain was a massive mistake, he went down back to Brazil and started basically the JetBlue of Brazil. Azul in Portuguese means blue. And now he has partnered with this Portuguese bus company, weirdly, to buy out the Portuguese government's 61% stake in TAP. So it will now be run ostensibly by Azul, which is fantastic. And then on the heels of this, yesterday or day before yesterday, United Airlines said that they are spending $100 million to acquire a 5% stake in Azul.
In Azul, yeah.
So they're now going to do a strategic partnership. So all of a sudden, Azul has become an even bigger player than they already are. So they're going to start doing long-haul A330 flights to the U.S. to link up the substantial South American populations in the southeastern U.S. to South America. So these guys are pretty an impressive outfit.
No, they are. And, Brazil is a market that was shaken up in the airline industry. I mean, the Varig, you remember if you were a kid,
Yeah.
Varig was the national carrier. It actually folded a long time ago, I think 2008 already. And I've been flying in Brazilian domestic airlines, and it's clearly a market that is ripe for disruption. I mean, I don't like to use that term all the time, but it actually is. I mean, there's room. It's a growing market, although they have had some hiccups lately, but it's a growing market. There are big sports events coming up as well, so it's smart.
And if you think about if they own the majority of a Portuguese airline that's flying long haul into Brazil, which is a Portuguese-speaking company, they've just acquired a huge amount of inbound traffic for their domestic and regional networks. So really smart. I wonder if they're going to keep the TAP branding, or I would imagine they would. But that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I have a lot of respect and admiration for David Neeleman. He's a smart guy.
Yeah, I do too. I would add that they probably will, because there've been some strikes last year, and I don't think they can just stop the entire current operations. They're really keeping the operations. They're trying to streamline the airline, but I'm sure that at least for the time being, they cannot just go with the unions and say, oh, you know what, we're going to scrap everything we've had and change the airline and everything. So I think but it's smart, and it could even. If you think even further, it could even become like a port of entry to the entire South American market, because you land to Brazil, and then you could continue south to Argentina or Peru or Uruguay
absolutely.
and back north. So it could be something really smart.
Absolutely.
Back to Europe for a silly story, but yes, I wanted to mention it. So Ryanair, the low cost in Europe, so has policies which most of the airlines have, is that once you put your name on a booking ticket, you cannot change it. So you better not make a mistake, because it's really hard. I don't know if you've ever had that issue. I've had it when a travel agent, because my last name, Papa Dimitri, obviously is prone for people to make mistakes with it. So I've had to contact the travel agent, guys, you have to change my name because it's not the right name. But here at Ryanair, so some father wrote the name of a kid wrong. So the last wrong, because as a joke, the guy is called Adam Armstrong, is 19, but on his Facebook page he wrote his last name West, Adam West, because of the actor who played Batman in the 60s. Yep. So he put Adam West on the ticket, and then obviously Ryanair would refuse him entry. So instead of paying the price that it would cost to change the name, which was I don't remember, like 200 quid or something, the guy actually legally changed his name.
I know, I love this. It's such a big middle finger. I mean, it's his own fault in a way, but it's and it ended up being cheaper and faster to legally change his name.
It's crazy.
And to have the name change on the ticket.
Yeah, so it was 220 quid to change the name by Ryanair's rule. And I think he changed his name by deed for free, and then ordered a new passport, which ended up costing him like 103 British pound. So basically, between 103 to 220, he saved 117 pounds. This is just insane.
I love it.
Oh well, it's a stepfather, not his father. Obviously, his father would have known his real name, the stepfather, because he was going with his girlfriend. That'd be funny story.
Yeah, lovely story.
But now back to our favorite aircraft, the 747. So you have some good news.
I do have some good news. At the Paris Air Show, the Russian cargo airline, Airbridge Cargo, ordered 20, count them, 20 747-8 cargo planes worth $7.4 billion. And this is basically perfect timing, because it shows some confidence in the platform, but also there was real concern that Boeing didn't have enough orders on the books to even make it worth their while to keep the production line open. So this was a real shot in the arm to our beloved 747.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I was in Frankfurt on a layover this last week. And when you land, it was a clear day. There was like so many 747s. Of course, most of them are the still the 400s. I couldn't see the one with the retro livery. They've done a 747-8.
Nice.
But I mean, it's still such a great aircraft to just look at. I mean, I love it.
It's such a great airplane, and Boeing keeps slowing down production on the line. I think they cut it from 1.5 planes a month to 1.3, and then they cut it again.
Yeah, now they're announcing that they will cut it to one per month starting in March.
What's crazy is that even at one per month, the 747-800 is still profitable.
Yeah,
which is pretty amazing. So, that's. I think it's just adding a little bit more life to something that we know is inevitably going to come to an end. So,
yeah.
I just flew on a 747-400, and I was quite nostalgic and thought, I can't imagine a world where I think we're decades away from them not flying anymore, literally decades.
Of course.
But it's not going to be a nice feeling when they finally close that line.
No, really not. I mean, but that's a glimmer of hope for us. I mean, I still haven't flown the Dash 8, but let's hope that we'll do that. So we'll have to fly. It's just basically Lufthansa to the US to do that.
Yeah.
We'll have to find an excuse, Alex. Now back to not really reality, but to Hollywood, and it was something that was bound to happen. The hero that saved Passenger on the Hudson.
So you're right. This was an inevitability. So apparently, Tom Hanks and Clint Eastwood are teaming up to make a movie about the Miracle on the Hudson, which was the U.S. Airways flight that had 2 simultaneous bird strikes, both engines shut down, and the captain, Sully Sullenberger, somehow managed to land it basically perfectly on a river. And Clint Eastwood is apparently going to direct it, and Tom Hanks is going to play Captain Sully. So it'll be interesting to see. I want to know how they're going to sustain basically 5 minutes of activity for 90 minutes, but that's Clint Eastwood's specialty. So weirdly, I saw this plane sitting on the water on the Hudson River.
Oh wow.
I was in a hotel in the meatpacking district, and Twitter just lit up saying a plane has crashed on the Hudson River, and I was like, I'm 2 blocks from the Hudson River. So I ran down, and sure enough, there was this plane sitting on the water and all the passengers standing on the wing. It was the most surreal thing I've ever seen in my life. Oh, absolutely wow. Bizarre. So
it must be.
This will be, if they do it right, this could be really, really interesting.
Yeah, it could be. Honestly, I haven't seen a movie with about flying for a long time. I mean, there was this thing with Denzel Washington.
Flight, which is.
Have you seen it?
It was awful. Yeah, it was terrible.
Okay, so I won't see it.
No, I wouldn't recommend it.
But the problem with this type of movies is that usually I watch a lot of movies when I'm flying, and those are heavily edited because obviously they don't want to induce fear of flying to the people watching the movie. So the last time I remember I saw a movie, it was the World War Z with Brad Pitt, that zombie movie. Right. And there's a scene there where there's a plane crash, and of course I could feel it because they're in the plane, and suddenly the movie cuts out for like 3 minutes. I mean, clearly there's evidently the entire crash out, and then the next scene comes up, and I'm like, I missed something here. Yes.
That's weird.
Yeah, it is. Anyway, to our second part of the show, the innovation passenger experience part of the show. So first, a little stories, because you flew, you mentioned 4 legs to go quickly to the US and back. And you flew like lucky bastard. You flew BA first. I don't know if that's being lucky bastard, but you flew in first class.
I did. I flew BA first, which was quite an experience. Like I said, on a 747-400 right in the nose, which was great. And it was great. Even though the plane, I think I said to you, was 21 years old, it was in really good shape. I got to go in the Concorde room, which is the first class lounge at Terminal 5. Or actually, they have 2 first class lounges. They have the Concorde room, which is kind of like it literally feels like a restaurant. You have really nice private booths, and the food was outstanding. And then they have a first class lounge, which is more of a literal lounge, like lots of couches and self-service food, which is pretty good. But the first class on board was like they walk you to your seat. The suite is very well designed. There's actually 12 or 14 seats in the cabin, which is more than a Cathay or a Emirates, I would imagine. But the seat was really comfortable, obviously lie flat, really well done. The service was excellent. The food was amazing. The wine list was all the kind of vintage Grand Cru stuff. They have a cool. I posted a video on Twitter and Facebook, but you have at least 2 windows, if not 3, and they have this really, instead of just the traditional blinds which you pull down, they have a button that you press, and this kind of concertinaed blind comes down with some really nice lighting.
Oh yeah. That's interesting, actually.
It's a really cool effect.
Because when I flew, had the only times I flew first again, and I said it a few weeks ago, several times. Luckily, was Emirates. And Emirates in the A380, they have also, you press a button, but these little shades, I don't know how you call them, Venetian, they are on in the Airbus A380 for Emirates. They're each window has a separate one, whereas for you it was like this, almost like it seemed like there was another window in front of the
yes, that's windows. Right. There was a window, an internal window in front of the 2 or 3 windows on the outside of the airplane, which really made it feel like you were in a room.
Yeah, that's the feeling. Yeah, wow.
And it was a really sensible kind of piece of industrial design, because it made you feel like you weren't in an airplane as much, because you had this solid window that must have been like 2 feet by 4 feet. So that was really cool. The IFE was atrocious, awful, really, really bad. But I think they know that, because it was an older airplane. It was a nice big screen, but really low resolution. The content wasn't great. The interface wasn't great. But from what I understand, on their newer Dreamliners and A380s, it's totally different, much better.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I mean, most people, if you've never flown premium, actually, the IFE is the same. You might have a bigger screen, but the IFE is the same as in coach. So it's not because you're flying premium that you have like more movies or a better experience. Usually, it's just a bigger screen. So in that case, basically, you probably had a bigger screen than the guys behind you. But if the IFE is old, it's just old. There's no.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the plane. It was installed in 2010.
But the seat looked. I mean, you sent me some pictures while you were boarding, obviously. And the seat looked pretty good, actually.
It was very good. The seat was incredibly comfortable, very well laid out.
Did you sleep?
I did. I did. It was a 9-hour flight, so I wanted to get some shut eye because I had to connect on to Memphis from Miami. So yeah, it was really good. The service was good. The menus were. I kept it. The menus were absolutely beautiful, and they had really nice Art Deco iconography.
Oh wow!
Shout back almost to the Imperial Airways days.
Nice.
But yeah, the experience was really good. The service was really good. The bits and pieces that they called it, what do they call it? The tuck shop or pantry or something, where there's food throughout the flight that they just leave out for you. It was really, really good.
Is that a bar, or is that an area where
there's
you go?
Like a pedestal in the middle of the cabin where the nose comes in, and they wouldn't be able to fit another seat.
Yeah.
That they just put fruit and chocolates and candy. But I actually went back to the Club World section. Theirs was actually better. They had little mini candy bars and stuff.
You know what?
So
Actually, you know what? It's the same at Emirates. They have a bar in front. A bar like an area when you can have like some juices and some things to eat. But the best food is actually in business class. So I always tend to go back.
Yeah, it was good, but very solid. I mean, I can't imagine what the BA first experience like in an A380 or a Dreamliner.
Wow. Yeah.
To be on a 21-year-old plane and have that level of experience was really good. If it weren't for the IFE, it would have been absolutely spot on.
So
yeah, it was good.
So then you, because that was a funny story, because so then you had to do a layover. I mean, you had to do a connection, right? And the thing with the US is like, which is for me completely insane. You're never sure. I mean, you fly first. Come on, right? You fly the highest class possible if you discount the residence from Etihad or something. You fly the highest class possible, and you're not sure you can get access to the lounge where you connect. What is up with that?
So Miami, God, that airport. So you land, and most major U.S. airports now have electronic immigration, which is fantastic. It's all kiosk-based.
Yeah.
It literally takes 30 seconds.
I've experienced that in JFK. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
So good. You get a little receipt at the end of it, and
Correct.
You show it to somebody, and it takes no time. But then when you collect your bags, you have to go through customs, even if you have a connecting flight. And I had about 2.5 hours connection, and I sent Paul a message. There must have been, without exaggeration, 1,000 people in line to go through customs. It was a nightmare scenario. And a lot of people were going to miss their connections. I thought I was going to miss mine. And then they did such a poor job of directions that they didn't tell anybody that at the very, very far end of the baggage hall, which is very, very big, there was another set of customs gate that took me 15 minutes to go through. So there was like 1,000 people, 2.5 hour queue, and then maybe 200 people and, and like 15 minutes to go through it. I was like, so bad. But yes, I was on a business class fare with some first class legs. It was some kind of airfare jiggery pokery that I did, but I was on first class tickets for 3 of my 4 flights. And I thought, great, I'm going to go to the American Airlines lounge because I was ticketed on an American. Go in and just chill out for a little bit before my next flight in a couple of hours. And I went up to the desk at the American Airlines Admiral's Lounge, I think they're called. And they said, where are you flying to? I said, Memphis. And they said, oh, sorry, you can't come in. So I'm flying first. Yeah, domestic first can't come into the airline, come into the lounge. And I was like, are you kidding?
Yeah, that's
a first class ticket, like, I can't come into the lounge? I said, I was tired and kind of grouchy after the whole customs thing. I said, look, I've just flown all the way from London. And the gal was like, oh, you flew in from London? I said, yes. She's, what class? I was like, in first. Oh, come on in.
That doesn't make any sense.
So it doesn't make any sense. And it's like, there's so many ifs, ands, and buts. And then the last, she handed me 2 drink coupons. And I was like, okay, what the heck is this for? And you go into the lounge, which is fine. Like, it's a bit tired and shabby. But then for the food and the drinks, you have to pay.
My God.
For a first class lounge.
I don't get it. I mean,
you have to pay.
No wonder then people have like, oh, of course I want to fly, with premium airlines from, of Singapore or the Middle East. I mean, come on, you paying first class. Well, maybe okay, it was a client paying, but you flying first class. And they're making trouble for you to get into a lounge first, and then you pay for the food and drinks. What is up with that?
So to be fair, they did give me two drink vouchers, but if you wanted anything more than like nibbles, you had to pay for it. But I shouldn't complain. I'm only complaining in context of the other premium cabins I've experienced. But I have to say, I flew Miami, Memphis, Philadelphia on. They were American Airlines flights and U.S. Airways flights, but they were both operated by Republic, who are one of the contract carriers. And it was, funnily enough, the same flight crew and same cabin crew, even though they were on separate days. Both on E-175s, which I love that airplane. And the service and experience was really, really good.
Okay, cool. Okay. And then you flew back with U.S.
I flew on U.S. Airways A380 from Philadelphia to Manchester in their Envoy, which is business class, which is how I got the business class fare for the whole trip.
So first of all, US is disappearing, sadly.
US is disappearing. This was an American Airlines painted airplane, but obviously a U.S. Airways interior and crew. There was still a lot of hints towards the US Airways
it was already painted AA.
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
But not the inside.
No, there was still hints that it was. But I have to say, the service, which was all kind of like middle-aged men, every single one in the cabin, that's just an observation that I made. It was really, I never experienced anything like that. The service was excellent. They're very attentive, but not overly attentive. The food was solid. The IFE looked average, but didn't work on my flight, which
damn.
I didn't. Well, actually, the GPS or moving map worked and the music worked. There was no videos loaded. I didn't care. It was a 6-hour flight. I was going to sleep.
Sleep anyway. I've done the Envoy product, but it's been like almost 3 years ago. I mean, probably now the market has moved on, but it was a pretty solid product.
It was fine. It was a lie flat cocoon seat, very comfortable. Mm-hmm. Like I said, the food was good. The service was good. We were on time. I have no complaints. I thought it was great. And the in-flight bag, the amenity kit, when you open it up, they have artwork and iconography from all of the old airlines that made up what American is now. Oh, wow. And so mine was Piedmont. And so you open it up and it was like opening a Piedmont and Piedmont hasn't existed in decades. But I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah. Wow, that's
so yeah, I mean, American Airlines, I don't know. I didn't really experience American Airlines. I experienced British Airways, Republic, and U.S. Airways, all of which were really fine.
Very fine. Wow. So, great report.
Sorry,
no, that was good. I mean, come on, it's a great story. I've never flown any. I mean, besides the Envoy, I've never flown. I almost never flown BA. Obviously not in first class. So, I hope that someday I'll be able to try it. Maybe in the A380. And again, we said that I think it was last episode. But bye-bye US, because it's slowly disappearing. I love the logo. I love the iconography they were creating. The brand had something. It was not perfect as a matter of product, obviously, but they had something. I mean, when you look at, the botched job they do, Continental United, the logo doesn't mean anything. And you had this little US flag, basically, obviously, because it's called US. But it was, I kind of liked it very much. So
I did too, yeah.
So it was very modern. And Northwest was also kind of modern. It's a bit sad that the airlines that had a better, brand in terms of iconography, in terms of fonts, are the ones that are being eaten up and they're replaced by something kind of, United. All these logos are not really very. I'm talking about the big ones, right? They're not inspired, is the right term. So anyway, me very quickly, I've done several flights, but the one experience I want to quickly share was I took a flight from Geneva to London, and my ticket clearly was Swiss, and Geneva is not a hub, so it's a hub for EasyJet in Europe, but it's not a hub for anything. It's an endpoint. You usually do not transfer anything. So usually, you have your flight and it's uneventful. And for some strange reasons, I was in an Austrian flight. I was like, what is going on here? Why do I have an Austrian flight in Geneva? And actually, they're starting doing some wet lease now. So it's wet lease, for those who don't know the term, is basically when you fly into an aircraft that still has a livery from the original airline, has the crew and everything. So the crew was in all red. I hate that uniform, but they completely red. They spoke German, obviously. The plane, interesting though, was not Australian. It was saying Australian in small, but it was a big fat Star Alliance. So clearly it probably was made, it looked brand new. It was a Dash 8, the Embraer Dash 8, not the 747 Dash 8. And the one thing I wanted to say is that besides it was a bit of a strange experience, and I learned about it, that now Swiss is actually having 4 Dash 8s to wet lease, but they are usually done for places like Lugano. It's a very short or short haul flight, not for London, but we were only like 20 passengers. It made actually sense not to fly an Airbus back to London. Normally on an Embraer Dash 8, you've experienced that, Alex. You cannot bring your carry-on in because the overheads are too small. So you give it out just at the entry of the aircraft and you take it back. But actually, since it was empty, they allowed us to basically put the carry-ons on the seats. So that was pretty nice. Yeah. But the thing I really wanted to mention, very small quirk. I've said in the past that I'm not a huge fan of propeller airplanes, aircraft, and this one, it says on the little thing you get for the safety thing in front of you, it says Dash 8, Embraer 4 Dash 8, the quiet one. And I want to understand how quiet it can be. There's a propeller plane. If you don't have any noise cancelling headphones, you do. Anyway, moving on.
That's so funny. I love flying on propeller airplanes.
Well, yes, but they add up. Like, instead of taking like the actual flight time from London to Geneva, I mean, the opposite is usually an hour and 10 minutes, depending on the tailwinds. This one took an hour and 40. This is the kind of thing. It's not a big deal, right? Obviously, but this is something. And it seems also, I don't know if maybe it's an impression that the time to reach cruising altitude takes forever. An Airbus, at some point, they like, oh, now, you can release your seatbelts and stuff. And this is seems usually 10 to 15 minutes or something. And this one seems like for the first hour, we're still climbing.
Well, yeah, you've got some mountains to contend with too.
Yeah, obviously. Okay, back to the news. I'll tell another story about my past flights in a few, but back to the news. I found that fascinating because why did I never think about that? So Etihad,
this is such a smart idea, and you're right. I had the same reaction. I can't believe no one else is doing this. But Etihad have created a protected Twitter channel exclusively for their premium customers. So you know on Twitter you can lock your account so only people that you handpick to see it are able to see it. So they've created something called Etihad Premium, and it's only available to their gold and platinum members of their loyalty program, and you can only get access once you have been individually verified by Etihad. And then they use it as a channel to push specifically tailored events and news and offers just to those kind of quote unquote elite passengers. Such a good idea. I cannot believe no one else is doing this.
It's very
so
simple. I mean, it's one of the things, it makes the whole convoluted approach of sending you emails and communication and stuff so simple. I mean, it's...
It really is smart, and it gives you that sense of exclusivity and quote unquote access. So really smart idea.
Yeah.
Now I kind of want to see what they get.
Yeah. But I'm sure maybe that this been created, maybe some other airlines will think about it, because it's really an easy way to actually be in touch with your premium passengers. Still in just a quick mention, because I found that funny. So during the Paris Air Show, Qatar was at these. Obviously, if you've ever been to these air shows, you have like massive billboards with publicity, obviously, about airlines. And so Qatar made this huge ad, which clearly was touting the quality of air travel on a Dreamliner, only that the picture was clearly the A380.
That's a little embarrassing, isn't it?
Anyway.
And it's like the worst audience to make that kind of mistake to as well, because ordinarily if it was on a billboard by the freeway, no one would even notice. But if you're putting it in front of a bunch of airline people, they're going to instantly know that.
Exactly. Anyway, it was fun. Now, a story that I found pretty interesting, and I want to have your take. It was a TechCrunch. This is a company, almost a startup. It's called OneGo. So basically, it promises you to you buy a monthly fee of $1,500, and you can fly as much as you want. But unlike some of the other types of startups we've been talking in the past, you fly on Delta, American, United, and Virgin America. And on top, you have perks like Wi-Fi membership, TSA Pre, which is basically your pre-screened for security screening.
Which I use, and it's a godsend.
So, I mean, there are some constraints. You have to book your flight 7 days in advance. You cannot have more than four reservations at a time. You can pay, of course, some extra stuff, and it also it will open in the fall or the autumn, and it will be limited to the west coast of the United States at first. But what do you think about? It's only because the flat fee of all that you can fly is already been tried. We've mentioned some companies, but this one gives you access to basically traditional airliners. So what do you think about it?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a delicate business model, I think.
It is. I agree.
But if you think about, well, here's what I don't understand. Usually, as you get closer to the day of departure, not always, but usually prices rise, and especially when you are day of departure, the fees and prices are astronomical. Capping it at 7 days puts you in that higher price bracket. So you may be only able to need 3 or 4 flights in a month, and it's paid for itself. I can imagine if you know you're going to be flying a lot just because of your job or whatever, this could actually work out really, really well.
Yeah, but like as you said, I as a consumer, I would really love that, because again, you don't have to think too much, and you go to a single system point of entry and say, I want to fly from here to there, and that's done, and it's already taken care of. Now, in terms of the company itself, the economics behind it must be kind of a very delicate balance, because you're still dependent on other pricing. Maybe they have agreement, but still you're dependent on markets that are forces and are yours. So, well, we'll see. I wish them good luck.
Yeah, I do too. And I think in a lot of the comments, this was in a TechCrunch article, a couple of them I picked out were excited but skeptical, I think is probably the best way to put it, because there was just so many yeah buts and what about this and what about that, and they hadn't quite thought them all through yet. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other startups we'll be following, because we talked about Rise, we talked about, I don't remember the names.
Surfair.
Surfair, thank you. So, but these were like, the difference is like, oh, now you can go on Delta, basically. That's fine. That
Yeah.
very different value proposition. Again, it will be limited to the West Coast, which also is bizarre because you think this is the kind of thing I would also like to use for, to go coast to coast and not stay maybe between LA and SF. So
Yeah.
we'll see if it ever expands to something more than just basically going to the very short routes of the West. We'll see. Anyway, good luck. Good luck to them.
Yeah.
I was in Poland. I didn't see the disruption you're about to mention, but that was quite staggering, actually.
Yes, Poland's flag carrier LOT, they had to cancel quite a few flights on a day. I think it was last Sunday.
Yeah, it's the day I landed. This is why you sent me that, and I was landing, but I was flying Lufthansa, and I was like, "What the hell is going on?" I saw there was a lot of passengers, but I didn't realize that was that.
Yeah,
go on.
There were a lot of flights canceled because they were hacked, which is amazing. They quote unquote temporarily paralyzed LOT's computers, which probably means they hit the reservation system or the operations system. So 1,400 people, they were flying to short haul, actually Hamburg, Düsseldorf, Copenhagen, and within Poland, their flights were canceled. And I guess they solved the problem that same day. But I think either that day or the day after, LOT was going to make a huge announcement about their future, which they ended up doing, saying that they had plans to double the size of the airline in the next few years. And I can imagine that was some pretty stressful times in the IT department of LOT, knowing that this massive announcement was impending. But that can't have been a whole lot of fun.
No, you shouldn't have been. But again, it's in line with what we said. I mean, the definition of what hack means is always kind of very. We don't know. Maybe some internal devs did a fuck up, or maybe it was something. The password was too easy to figure out. We don't know what hack means here. It seems to be
Not
located
in this context, no.
only for the computers at Warsaw Champagne Airport. So I don't know, but still, it's something they have to figure out. And a lot of airlines will have this kind of. Potential attacks directed to them, I think, in the future, sadly so. Yep. But I think it's something. Talking about security, very quickly, I was transiting to Warsaw via Frankfurt, and yet another time. Which I love how they call themselves the hub experts, but when you have to transit between non-Schengen and Schengen, so basically between, you have to walk like three floors down. Or under the entire airport, come 3 floors up. I mean, this is not really a hub. You really fast. But the point is not this, because I kind of like otherwise Frankfurt Airport. It's not really it's a good airport, but security is always staggering. So I don't know if I had mentioned the story when I was flying from Frankfurt to Dubai a few weeks ago. They said, "Oh, the usual stuff. Do you have a laptop and some electronics?" I said, "Yeah, of course." So I put out my laptop and my iPad and. They said, "Do you have other electronics?" And I said, "Yeah, I have a camera." I said, "Can you pull the camera out?" I said, "Okay, I put the camera out." And basically my bag, probably like you, Alex, is filled with, electronics, basically cables and batteries and stuff. They actually ended up, so you went through the X-ray belt, and then they said, "Oh, no, we have to open it." So like, okay. And they took every single piece of cable out. And they put every single piece of cable, and they said, "You should have told us you had all these electronics." I'm like, okay. So basically they consider, and it was for a long-haul flight, they consider that at that point, security, I don't know if it's applied for the entire airport, they consider that every single, even like a USB cable, is an electronic that you have to pull out. So I was like, basically I have to empty my bag. And this time, though, same thing happens. I'm also having to go through security because I'm transferring from Schengen to non-Schengen zone. And the opposite, sorry. And I had with me, and that's my bad because it was completely stupid from me, I had one of these lighters, but the flamethrower lighters, the ones that basically have this, instead of a single light that comes out, flame, the flame is like a flamethrower. So I go through security. They said, "You have this?" Like, "Oh yeah, I'm so sorry." So, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm sorry. Can you just discard it?" And they look at me and say, "No, we can't discard it." I'm like, "You have to go back." And I'm like, "What do you mean I have to go back?" I said, "You have to go back." So I'm like, "Okay, so I have to go back and I can discard it and I rescan." No. You have to bring it to your airline. And I look at a security person, and she was a she, and I'm like, "What do you mean I have to bring it back to the airline?" She said, "Who do you flew with?" I'm like, "I flew with Lufthansa." "Okay, so you have to bring it to Lufthansa." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I mean, first of all, it was allowed because it was in the same bag at Heathrow, so it's maybe not even the airline's fault. It's like Heathrow maybe actually allowed me to go through with it. I mean, first and foremost, it was my fault to having it, obviously. But and then so she was refusing to let me go. So basically, what I did, I took it. Okay, whatever. I'll bring it through the airline. I took it back. So I went back to the security point. The only thing that I did is I have the first trash bin. I trashed it, and I went through another security point, and there you go. So it was. Meaning Frankfurt can be a bit, they have very stringent rules about security. You have to be careful because I don't know what they can, maybe, probably if anyone has any experience, they wants to tell us why they cannot discard themselves.
Yeah, I'd like to know that too. It seems really inconsistent as well.
And I told them, if you don't want to discard it physically, I can go there to supervision and put it in a trash bin somewhere and say no, like, I don't know. So maybe they have there must be a rule somewhere, but it doesn't say so much sense. Another thing I saw in London, I was invited to Founders Forum, which is invite-only tech event. We had Eric Schmidt, Reid Hoffman, who was the founder of LinkedIn, and other people show there. And a lot of stuff happened, totally not relevant to the airline industry. But one thing that I saw was the Aeromobile. So it was on display. So basically, it's a car and a plane in the same thing. I'll send you the picture. I don't know what you think about it.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's like I said, it's not in production. It's still prototypes. They're releasing a new prototype soon. So imagine this hybrid between a kind of small car, not small because it's kind of long, because of the wings basically kind of retract within the car. So that makes a very long car, and it's very bizarre because you have both the wheel and both a stick at the same time. I couldn't see any pedals, so I was kind of figuring how do you do rudder with, it's but anyway, it was funny. I don't know if you've went to the website or if you've been to the website.
Yeah, I did.
What do you think about that?
I just don't see the use case. Like, who is going to use this?
I don't know.
That's the only thing I don't get, and they still haven't figured.
I don't think there's a big market. Come on, you have to have your licensing pilot. You have to have the pilot license. Sorry, and you have to have obviously your driver's license, and then you have to have the authorities to accept that, because it's one thing to say, "Oh, I can just only fly." It's like, where do you take off from? And of course, this has to be licensed certified in countries. I think it's only certified. So originally it's from the Czech Republic. That's where they're building it. They told me, because some of the founders were there. They told me that they have access to a lot of the Airbus provider are located around that region, so they have access to a very good quality of the airline industry. But at the same time, I was like, yeah, but who's gonna have that?
Yeah, that's like the fundamental question I have. Who is gonna buy this?
And there's no pricing, nothing. But anyway, it was fun. I wish
that's cool that you got to see it in person.
Yeah, I wish I could have tried it, because there are videos that they've actually made it fly. So it actually flies. It's not just a concept that they say one day will fly. So I don't know. But I'll put the link. If anyone wants to has more information, not about the product, but thinks that there is actually a market, just hit us on Twitter or Facebook.
Yeah,
because I don't see it. In that discussion with one of the founders, I think it was the CEO of the company of that Aeromobile, he was like ranting about how the future of planes would be pilotless, and I was like, yeah, well, I'm not sure about that, but I've read a piece of news on CNN that says that there's an experimental airplane called the Centaur, which was actually flight tested this month and by the FAA near New York, and actually it is a pilotless aircraft. Have you seen that?
Wow.
Yeah,
that's very cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I don't think it will lead to having an A380 being pilotless, because there's a lot of other things going on, but they are already testing it, and why not? At the end of the day, I don't know if commercial aircrafts will ever have a pilot-less ability, but it's cool that they're testing it out. So I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, they had it kind of like rigged up, like to actually move the controls. It wasn't built as a specific, drone. Like it was. This can show that an existing plane, can fly autonomously.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, would you ever be a passenger in an aircraft?
Nope.
Okay, so we're moving on. Back to, you just said the word drone. Put the video on. Pretty cool. So EasyJet, so the other low cost in Europe with major low cost in Europe with Ryanair, before any departure, one of the pilots has to go and do a walk around, and instead of doing the walk around, they said, okay, let's do it with a drone to do the walk around. So there's a drone with a camera that goes around the plane, it looks up, and it can be also used for maintenance. And I don't know, why not?
Yeah, good idea. I think it will give the pilots access to viewpoints they couldn't get from the ground, and I think they're going to put some thermal imaging cameras on it as well, so they can look for any issues with the airplane that aren't immediately obvious to the naked eye. So it makes a lot of sense, and EasyJet are absolutely convinced by this that it's going to save them time and money.
Yeah. So next time,
Very cool idea.
If you're in an airport and you see a drone circling your EasyJet flight, don't be creeped out. It's just maintenance, because I'm sure we'll have like pictures on Facebook and Twitter. People like, wow, there's a drone around my aircraft. Finally, a very cool video that you sent me for the Dreamliner. Can you just describe it? I don't know if it's describable in words, but
the Dreamliner, the 7879. Was put on an amazing display at the Paris Air Show, where it was pretty much empty. I don't even know if it had seats in it, but they did the most unbelievable display of what this airplane is aerodynamically capable of, and it's really staggering to watch the performance. And it was a Vietnam Airlines 787, and the first thing it does is just take off like a rocket, like almost vertical climb off the runway. And then they're just throwing this thing around the sky. And it's such a graceful airplane anyway, but watching it like bank and roll is really very inspiring.
Yeah, it is.
To watch.
It is. So we'll put the video. Probably if you like airlines, you've already seen it, because he did the round for like 2 weeks, but it's really impressive. It's really well filmed. Not really an app of the week, but very quickly, because Alex and me have been talking about that one and I've been using it for fun. So we mentioned, obviously, there's a lot of apps and websites to track your history, your past flights. There's one called Jet Lovers, jetlovers.com. You connect with either Foursquare, Twitter, or Facebook. You can have the three at the same time, obviously. And it creates like this profile of all of your flights that it can grab for all these sources. There's no connection with TripIt though, and it's fun. I mean, there's no intent besides being fun. There's a little bit of a competition, because it will look up your friends and give you badges and say, okay, you're an astronaut and you are an A380 and you are Soyuz because you have accrued more and more miles. So it creates it's funny. The thing that I really like, because that was the reason I wanted to mention here, besides you having fun and testing it out, is that it automatically grabs those flights. And I think this is something that other websites, including OpenFlight that we had at the app of the week, could use because you still the manual input, maybe for someone like Alex, because he has a whole Excel spreadsheet probably with all these flights, is something that works. But it's nice to have these kind of automated ways of doing it.
Yeah, it's clever. I played with it for the first time last night, and you connect Foursquare, Facebook, and Twitter, and it kind of figures out where you were based on check-ins and everything like that. It got a few of mine wrong, but it's very easy to correct them. I use OpenFlights, as you mentioned earlier, because it does connect with TripIt, and I use TripIt for everything. So I just say, go and look at where I've been on TripIt, and that does it. So I think if Jet Lovers do a TripIt integration, then it comes.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I there's no word about who founded it. Probably, for what I learned, it's some guys, or maybe some guy even in Russia. But there's no about of the company, so I don't know where it comes from. There's an iPhone app apparently coming up, but I don't know. It's been said that it was coming up forever, so maybe it will never. It's fun. It's not something, again, don't take it as something that you will, even OpenFlight is more, you can do more with it than this one, but this is kind of it's kind of witty. The way it's done is pretty fun.
It's definitely prettier than.
Yes, it is pretty. It creates a few false positive, because you said, so for instance, for me, it created I think Gare du Nord, which is one of the railway stations in France, created as a airport. It was like, because I took the Eurostar from here. So because again, it takes the 2 Foursquare check-ins, and it said, okay, you've done this travel, so you've probably been flying. No, I've taken the train, but you still added. Or it creates a false positive if your friend of yours checks you in somewhere else. Ken Brady checked me in during South by Southwest this year in Austin. I was not there. I just did that on Foursquare for fun. But obviously that absolutely said, oh, you've flew to Austin while I was flying in another place at the same time. But if you don't, but again, I don't take it too seriously. So if it's okay, if it does a little bit of mistakes, it's a bit fun.
Yeah.
The thing though that I complain is a big word about TripIt is that I cannot add flights from my past that were before, I think 2010 or something, because it doesn't have the database anymore. So if I can say I've been to one place or another, but it won't actually allow me to look up for that flight. So it's this is why I was playing with Jet Lovers, because I wanted to find a way to have all my flights. But anyway,
I see.
no big deal. It's fun. Try it out, guys. It's a fun little app. So now on to Memphis. So Memphis, I've never flown there. You've flown, so you'll have. But the one thing that staggers me is that if you go to Wikipedia or Google Earth, you'll see the size of the airport, and the first thing comes to my mind like, wow, this is a huge airport. And then I look at the numbers of passengers a year, and it's like 3.5 million. Like, what's up with that?
Yeah. It's a strange little airport. It's not little, but okay, so the best way to give you a sense of its scale compared to other airports is I landed at Terminal A and got a message that the person who was meeting me was in Terminal B. I'm like, oh man, how the hell am I going to get? It's like 11:30 at night. How am I going to get from Terminal A to Terminal B? And I asked the security guard, and he's like, it's 20 feet that way. And sure enough, you walk through this door and you go from Terminal A to Terminal B. It's a tiny airport in terms of passengers. I mean, they've bolted on some piers onto the original terminal from the 60s. I think it was in 1963 to make it a little bit longer and accommodate fewer airplanes. But you're right. In terms of passenger movements, it's small fries. It's small fries. But it is the second busiest air cargo terminal in the entire world, second only to Hong Kong. And it just lost that crown last year. But sadly, the traffic for passengers has been dropping precipitously year over year. It was down 21% last year, 30% the year before, 22%. To give you an example, in 2000, 11 million passengers a year. Last year, 3.5.
I think it's also because I think Delta kind of gave up on it, right?
Delta pulled out as a hub. But so it is a typical Midwest airport from a passenger perspective. It was fine. It had what you needed. No complaints here or there. But FedEx's home base, global headquarters, is at Memphis. And I sat waiting for my flight, looking out the window, and without exaggeration, a FedEx Heavy was taking off or landing every 45 seconds.
Wow.
It was constant.
Yeah, there's four runways, so it's a really big
Four
airport.
runways. And FedEx, don't forget, FedEx have 675 airplanes. And when you take off out of FedEx, if you're taking off, I guess it would be to the west. On the right-hand side of the airplane, you look down on the FedEx ramp, and it just goes on and on and on and on with DC-10s, A300s, A310s, 757s, 767s, MD-11s, and then all the way down to like Cessna Grand Caravans.
Wow.
I think they've retired all of their 727s, but it is just amazing to watch. I took a time lapse of it, and it's just like, white plane, white plane, white plane, white plane, taxiing or landing or taking off. Just really impressive to see how they have it done.
Oh, so I would gather that it's not really a good airport for layovers, though, right?
Not really.
I
don't think it would be too bad.
Was there a business lounge?
I don't know. I wasn't there for long enough.
Okay.
Your time. I had to sprint.
Well, again, I guess, I mean, if it was an airport that catered for like 10 million plus passengers, I guess there is. But did you have the feeling that it was empty, or like it felt like too big for the number of passengers, or not even?
No, I think it was just the right size for the amount of passengers. I think it was a lot of people are I think they're going to see those numbers ticking up. I think
Okay.
Southwest and Allegiant are putting a few more passenger airlines too. American are redoing their terminal at the moment.
Oh, okay. So there's investment.
Yeah, and they've actually upgauged it. It was apparently a smaller regional jet to Miami and to Philadelphia, but now it's an E175. So I think it ought to tick up, but it's nothing compared to what FedEx do. FedEx keeps that airport alive.
Yeah, obviously. That's that's their hub in a way. So obviously they
Big
do.
time.
And it was not indirectly because it's a song I love. I don't know if you remember the song from Mark Kahn called "Walking in Memphis."
Yes.
Back in 1990, probably. And the song opens up with "Put on my blue suede shoes and I boarded the plane, touched down in the land of the Delta Blues." So basically, that's probably the airport he was talking about.
Yeah, and I have to say, Memphis was a lovely city. Really nice people. I had the most life-changing barbecue I've ever had in my
No way!
existence.
Tell me.
That was my. I was on the ground in Memphis. I landed at 11:30 at night, and I had to leave at 2:00 the next day. So I was there for no amount of time. But I said to the team I was working with there, I will do whatever you want. I will be wherever you need to be, wherever and when you need me. I just cannot come to Memphis and not have barbecue. That's a sin. So at like 10:30 in the morning, I walked downtown Memphis and I found Central Barbecue, and I had the most amazing ribs I've ever had in my life. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back to Memphis because it was beautiful, but I felt like I did what I needed to do.
Well, I hope you took some on your flight home then.
Yeah, that would have been a better idea.
Well, on that thought, I'll see you next week. I don't know which airport yet, but maybe with other type of ribs or barbecue.
Yeah, with food.
Always. We should actually do a segment about food in planes.
Best airline food. Okay,
Yeah, we
done.
should absolutely do that. On that, bye, Alex. See you next
Bye.
week.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye. Happy flying.
On behalf of Layovers and the entire crew, we would like to thank you for joining us on this podcast today. And we're looking forward to seeing you on board again next week. Flight attendants, please prepare for landing.